So the Resource Hero v14 release is now available on the Salesforce App Exchange, and the main feature that we've released is enhanced capacity. So what I would like to do is walk through the current utilization and capacity reports that are available in Resource Hero, and then talk about the new features and functionality that's going to be available with enhanced capacity. Let's start by looking at the existing utilization reports. And these reports can be found in your Resource Hero app reports folder. And there are several. There's weekly forecast utilization detail and summary, and then we have monthly variance as well. But let's take a look at the weekly summary report first. So we can see on this report that we have a list of our resources across the left. We have our calendar weeks across the top, and we're showing our calculated utilization percentage for each week. Now, if we edit this report, we can see that the calculation that we're using is a field here on the resource object called weekly target max hours. Okay, so taking a look at that, let's jump over to a resource record. Maybe we could take a look at Olivia White here, and we can see that weekly target max hours field. Now, the challenge is that by using a weekly target max hours field, that is a static field that will be used for every single week, regardless as to whether or not Olivia has different capacity for different times of the year, for example. So if we wanted to have a capacity of 45 hours per week from January to June, and then maybe change that maybe during the summer months from July to August, for example, maybe set that to 35. By changing this value, it's going to change the utilization across all the weeks. Again, every week is going to leverage that same exact field as part of the calculation. So the other challenge that we then face is when we, if we wanted to try to take this information and group it by calendar day, well, that's easy enough, right? We could take a weekly target hours and we can divide it by 5 to give us our daily utilization or daily capacity. But where it gets complicated is when we want to start grouping these reports by calendar month, for example. So in that case, we would have to take that weekly target divided by 5. And then for each calendar month, we would have to know exactly how many work days are in that month, and then do that multiplication to give your total, capacity for that particular month. So it can be done, but it's complicated. And it's also a challenge because if you want to look at a report, one utilization report by day, one by week, one by month, you would need to have separate reports for each of those, each with a different calculated utilization field. And that brings us into what we can do today with enhanced capacity. So if we jump back to our resource record, what you'll notice now is that we have a new tab called capacity. And if we click on that, we can see individual capacity records for Olivia White. So in this case, we're keeping it simple. We have 2 records here, one for the year 2025, so January to December, and then the same thing here for 2026. And what we can do, if I click new here and you can see the edit screen, we can actually specify a particular date period, so start date and end date, and then we can specify the exact number of hours that resource is going to work for each of the calendar days. So in a simple use case like we have here, we can say from January 1st to December 31st, we might specify 8 hours per day, Monday through Friday. Maybe we would want to specify a different capacity for summer months. So again, in that example, we can say from July 1st until August 31st, maybe it's 10 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. So again, we can specify the exact capacity that we want down to the individual workday. Now, once you save those records, what we're doing behind the scenes is creating individual resource assignments for that capacity record for this resource, and individual resource forecast capacity records as well. So the short of it is that all of your forecast records, all of your actuals that are being entered from time tracking, and your capacity records are all stored within the same data model, within the resource assignment and the resource forecast object, so that it's easy to report on those all together. So if we jump back to our reports tab and we go to our all folders, you'll see that we now have a new folder called RH Capacity Utilization Reports. And within that folder, we have 3 variations of the same report. One is looking at it from a resource perspective, one from a role perspective, and then one from the team perspective. So let's start with the simple one. We'll go to the resource summary version of our report, and we'll change this to stack summaries. And what we can see as I scroll down is that for each of our resources, again by calendar week, we can now see for those individual weeks, what is that resource's total capacity, what is their total forecasted hours, what is their calculated forecast utilization percentage, what is their actuals that they've tracked, and what is their actual utilization percentage. Now, the nice thing is that if we were to edit this report and we would take a look at that forecast utilization percentage calculation, we can see that we're simply taking our forecast and we're comparing it to our capacity, our total capacity for this period. So the benefit is there's no calculations based on week, no calculations based on month or quarter or other date groupings. So if we wanted to see this report grouped by calendar month, all we would need to do is just change this to month and run the report, and that's it. There's no modifications to the actual formula required. Now, if I switch this back to our weekly view, change this to group dates by day, but we're grouping by week beginning, so that's okay. So if we look at this report now, grouped again by calendar week, the other thing that we can see here is that we're looking at our forecast and actual utilization percentage over the time period, right? So we can kind of compare what was our forecasted utilization percentage and our actual utilization percentage. Now, I mentioned that there was a few other reports in that same folder. So if we go back to our folders and we take a look at this, let's take a look at the team summary. Now, what's cool about this, and again, I'll switch to stack summaries, is that because we're creating individual capacity forecasts and they exist in the same data model as our forecast records and our actual records, we can now group by any field that we like and get accurate utilization calculations. So in this case, we're grouping by the resource team. So now I can get a glimpse into, for the entire architecture team, for example, what is the total capacity of that team? And again, all those same calculations like the roll-up forecast, the actuals, and the utilization percentage for each of those, for each of the time periods. And we can do the same thing based on role or any other resource field that you have. Now, reports are very useful. Lets you get into the information, and you can identify a particular team that might be over allocated or under allocated depending on the situation. But we also wanted to give you some dashboards with this release as well. So let's go to the dashboards tab, and now we'll go to all folders and look at the resource hero dashboards. And what we have here are 3 dashboards that we're including with this release. And we'll start with the highest level, and we'll kind of drill down as we go here. So starting with the RH Company Overview dashboard, we'll give this a second to refresh. What we're showing here is basically for a given time period. In this case, we're looking at all time. So let's switch this to maybe year to date, so we can kind of see the company, how the company is performing year to date. We can see our forecasted utilization percentage overall for the entire company. We can see our actual utilization percentage for the entire company. And then again, we can kind of see that breakout by individual calendar weeks here, comparing those two values. As we scroll down, we can see our team summary. So, for each of our teams that we have identified within our company, we can see their total capacity. We can see the total forecast for those teams, the utilization percentage year to date, actual hours tracked year to date, and then the same thing for actual utilization percentage. And then we can kind of see the breakout by team, for their total forecasted hours for this year. As we scroll down, we can see similar information for the roles as well. So based on our, when we create our capacity records, we can identify a role for that capacity. So potentially you could have 2 roles for the same resource. Maybe one resource has a 6 hours a day of development capacity, and maybe they have 2 hours a day of account management or something like that. But in any case, when we look at our summary here, we can see the total capacity and all the calculations, broken out by role. And then we can visualize some of that information here as well. The nice thing about this is very similar to what we had with our required FTEs by role report in the past, but basically allowing you to see for each of the different roles that you have or that you have forecasted for your organization, how does it break out by week? And do you have enough capacity for that particular role within your organization? So these reports will help with that. Now, if I go back to our dashboards again, we also have a single team dashboard that we can leverage as well. Now, this, if we drill into a specific team, so for example, maybe the development team, this will give me some detailed information about that particular team for the last week, for the current week, and for the next week, as well as year to date. So as we can see, kind of starting at the top here, we're looking at information for last week. So this shows us that for this development team, their actual utilization percentage was 88% last week. We can see the breakout of where that time went, or who tracked that time. So actuals by resource, so we can kind of get a visual indication there. We can see which projects or opportunities that time was tracked against, and again, a visual representation of that. And then for each member of the development team, we can see their breakout for last week as well. What was their capacity? And again, the same forecast, actual, and utilization calculations as well. Now, very similar, this was for last week, but if we scroll down, we can see those same calculations and visualizations for this week. And if we scroll down, we can see the same visualizations and calculations for next week as well, except in this case, we're looking at our forecast utilization and our forecasted hours for next week. And then finally, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we can see kind of the breakout for the entire year to date as well. And again, we're looking at overall utilization percentages, the breakout by calendar week here, so we can kind of see that over time. And then for the individual resources, their capacity, forecast, actuals, and their calculations as well. Now, again, going back to our dashboards, if we drill down even further, we're also including a My Resource Hero dashboard. So this is meant for an individual contributor to see some details about their time that they've tracked and what they have coming up on their forecasts, again, at the individual contributor level. So as you scroll down, we can see, again, very similar to what we had on the single team, but we're looking at last week, this week, and next week, where we can see their utilization percentage. We can see what projects that they've tracked their time against. We can see that kind of breakout by calendar day for the week as well. And then we can see the individual records that they've tracked against, both looking at the actual hours as well as any notes that they might have entered for that time. So looking at last week, we have next week, and then as we scroll down, we can see their forecast for next week as well. All right. So that's a quick overview of what is available with the Resource Hero v14 release, specifically around enhanced capacity. So we are excited to see how you'll leverage this enhanced capacity functionality. Again, creating your capacity records against your resources, and then leveraging some of those out-of-the-box reports and dashboards, and of course, building your own reports and dashboards based on your own unique use cases. And as always, if you have any questions or if you need help with any of this, please reach out. We're always happy to help.